leading a new generation of Republican. This is the Grand New Party Update.
Last Wednesday, CNBC hosted the third debate of the GOP primaries. The event attracted 14 million viewers, far short of the 23 million viewers on CNN and 24 million viewers on Fox. That aside, it was a network record according to the ratings company Nielsen. Prior to the debate, CNBC's highest viewership had been 3.9 million, and that was thanks to the Olympics. All of the GOP debates so far have at least tripled the historic average for the Republican primary debates. The event was almost universally called adversarial and biased, so much so that the Republican Party has now canceled their February debate on NBC. And I'd say about the two biggest moments of the night were Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio calling out the moderators. How about you, Dennis?
That was really good. Actually, Donald Trump had a couple of good lines against the moderators, too. It seemed like just about every candidate took a swing at him. And they had special meetings afterwards with the RNC about how can we change it to make it a little more fair with all debates. And they're no surprise that the RNC said, hey, we're not letting you guys pull that shit again. And they pulled the plug on CNBC. I was one of those people who decided not to watch the full debate because I knew exactly what it was going to be. And it was biased, asking questions that have no purpose. Of course, Chrissy had a great thing where he said, hey, you're talking about fantasy football. People are getting their heads cut off in the Middle East. That's what we should be focused on. That's why I didn't watch the debate, because I knew it was going to go in that direction. And, of course, I knew my candidate wasn't going to get any speaking time, so I'd rather just watch the highlights and not deal with the commercial breaks and staying up late to watch garbage.
Now the Republican candidates themselves are saying that they might not trust the Republican Party to negotiate future debates for them. The candidates themselves are saying they might get together and negotiate future debate terms so that all the candidates get their say as to the rules of the debate rather than trusting the party to do it. So this has even broken faith between the Republican Party and the candidates as far as scheduling the debates and what rules the debates will go by.
Yeah, I've only heard the Donald Trump camp come out and say that they'll do their own negotiating because that's just the way Donald Trump does it. I haven't heard much. I didn't hear anything out of the senators there. I haven't heard anything out of their camps about that.
The article I was reading, it was primarily Donald Trump that they were looking at, so that's probably exactly what it is.
Donald Trump's being arrogant and, I don't need anyone, I can do it all myself. And he's hoping to get more moderate, the anti-politician. I don't need the RNC. Well, if you can't get your own party that you're supposedly a part of to support you when you're president, how are you going to get anything passed? Or is he just going to write executive orders like the previous two presidents?
One interesting thing I saw was The Blaze has now put out, that's Glenn Beck's network. They've actually put out a statement. Glenn Beck sent out a personal message to all of the candidates inviting them to a debate with The Blaze, which will be free to view. They want to give all the candidates the same questions across the board, and they also want it moderated by the chairman of the RNC.
I didn't hear that they wanted it to be moderated by the chairman of the RNC. That is a smart move for the Blaze Network, an amazing conservative network. And I'm glad that they're trying to make it as fair as possible because I know the Blaze is completely biased towards Ted Cruz, which I have really no problem with because I like Ted Cruz. So if I was a moderate, because I know they don't like Carly Fiorina, I know they don't like Lindsey Graham, I know they don't like a couple other guys on that stage, but I'm glad that they would say that the RNC chair would be the one moderating it, and that they would ask the same questions to all the candidates, making it very fair. And I think they should definitely take up the network, the Blaze, on that offer.
Now, I think they should too, because, with the chairman of the RNC moderating it, I think it's Reese Priebus.
Yes.
Obviously, he's going to be asking them questions from a conservative point of view. Makes sense for the conservative primaries, but is it a case when you're taking the journalists out of it, because that's what they're saying, they wanted to take the journalists out of it, is it the case where you have the fox watching the chicken coop where the chairman of the RNC just might go too easy on them, or do you think that's not going to be an issue?
No, if the Blaze are the ones writing the questions, then I don't see that being an issue, because what it comes down to is instead of them getting asked stupid questions like, who's on your fantasy football team, you're going to be asked questions like, hey, ISIS is moving this aggressively in the Middle East, how are you going to deal with it? Questions that actually have real substantive answers. I don't care that Jeb Bush has Gronkowski on his fantasy football team. My opponent this week had Rob Gronkowski on his fantasy football, and I still might beat him. So it doesn't matter to me who's on your fantasy football team. It matters to me is how are you going to keep me and my family safe, and then my next generation safe.
The Blaze Network, at the very least, would have very different priorities.
I used to listen to it every day. Now I listen to it every once in a while. I love the Blaze. I think it's a great alternative news source. And I think that the RNC, I mean, I don't know how they didn't see this coming by giving it to such a one-sided network. I mean, is anyone surprised that the people over at NBC are liberals? I mean, was that like a surprise to anyone?
I'm surprised in the sense that CNBC and NBC and they've hosted debates before. It's not the first debate they've hosted. So it was kind of a bit of a shocker for them to go so overtly biased.
Well, because the left is afraid. And I think it was, hold on, I wrote this down. I think it was Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio has a great response, and there's 11 great candidates in the Republican primary. Our party is blessed. The Democrats can't even come up with one. So, the Hillary Clinton, the liberal super PAC, the mainstream media, which was also pointed out, they're scared.
Yeah.
And they're going to pull off every act they can so that we lose, because they know that we are probably going to win this thing.
I mean, Hillary Clinton supporters are in complete denial of her record. You want to talk about Washington insiders with sketchy backgrounds. But I will say, Rand Paul, yet again, minimal amount of time given to him. Barely had anything to say. I think he had 2 minutes total.
Was he even asked a social issue? Any soundbite I got from the Rand Paul team was all economic-based, which is great because we are the smartest when it comes to economics. We're the best tax plan. And not to mention, we're the only one who's really going to cut the debt down to where it needs to be. But I didn't see anything about social issues.
I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think he was only asked 2 questions total. It was only 2 or 3 questions because he only spoke for about 2.5 minutes, maybe a little longer than that. But that's only enough time for really 2 or 3 questions, I would guesstimate. I do know another thing that I wanted to highlight was Kasich. Kasich came out swinging. I think it was an act of desperation. I think Kasich's on the ropes. And I think Kasich might actually be, I almost, after that debate, I almost wanted to change Kasich to the dropout pick for me because he was just whining the entire time.
Trump absolutely hit him where it hurt. Because Trump picked up with exactly what you're saying, and Trump went after him. He had some great and I hate giving Trump any credit, trust me on that. He had some great lines against Kasich.
You know it's bad when Dennis is giving Trump credit.
But Kasich, he has such a great record to run on, and he's not registering with people because he has to go up against people like Jeb Bush.
Well,
so I hope Kasich doesn't drop out because he'll continue to pull away from the governors in the race. The Chris Christie and the Jeb Bush. But I could see. I don't know, man. I like I said, I'm going to continue to say that I think a governor is the next to drop out. I think there'll be another governor.
I'm not saying that Kasich is necessarily a horrible character or somebody who whines all the time. I just felt in the past debate, what we saw, he tried to come out tough, he tried to come out hard, and he wanted to hit every other Republican. And I think it's an act of desperation when you try that sort of approach, because if somebody's on the fence between you and somebody else, and you're coming out swinging at that other person, then that makes you insulting one of the 2 candidates that person likes. I think people tend to respond negatively to that, so I think it was an act of desperation. I don't think it helped him whatsoever. And based off the numbers, I want to say Rubio probably had the best performance, maybe Carson.
Well, it doesn't help because what you just pointed out where, if you take a swing at someone, you're on the fence with 2 people, and one of those guys that took a nasty swing at the other guy, that's not going to happen. Look what happened. Jeb Bush tries to hop on that whole Marco Rubio should resign wagon. He gets completely owned by Marco Rubio, who's sincere, humble, and just honest about it. Hey, man, you're only attacking me because you feel like it's going to help you. When you get that type of thrown in your face, Jeb Bush has had 3 horrible debates. That
was the perfect response, and you're dead right. Jeb Bush has not come out to the debates. He just didn't show up to any of them so far.
He revamped his campaign today, but I don't think it's going to help him. I think he's dead in the water, and I think he should really think about just walking away and at least trying to save name. Because right now, if he keeps dragging this out, people are always going to remember him as the biggest loser of the Republican primary.
Now,
Does he really want to go out like that? Is that how he wants to end his legacy, as the biggest loser? Or does he want to go out as a really good governor?
I think the Daily Caller was the article I saw, and I didn't read the article itself, but it was about how Jeb Bush supporters were flocking to other candidates because they didn't see any movement from Bush towards the top. He's got a decaying campaign, and the headline was just priceless. It was Jeb Bush supporter, and then it had the quote, "Marco Rubio is an effing Jedi." And it says it all. He really just took that insult and mind bent it back onto Jeb Bush.
Well, here's the problem with Jeb Bush supporters. When he first came out, the people who supported him initially were what I call Yankee fans. People who are going to support the people
Let's not say names here.
Well, no, Yankee fans is what I mean is people who support the team they think's always going to win. They don't support the team because they have some tie to the city of New York or they think it's a good team. They probably can't even name most of the players on the team. They just want to support the winning team. So when the winning team starts losing or does end up in the World Series, they get nervous and they start flip-flopping and they hop on bandwagons. They're bandwagon sports. I know this. I have a friend of mine who was a big Jeb Bush supporter right off the gate. And I was like, how can you like this guy? And now he's 100% about Donald Trump. And why is that? Because Donald Trump is still the front runner, supposedly, at 26% or whatever he's at. And that's what they do. And as soon as Trump starts tanking, they're going to always just try to go for the front runner.
That's just sad. We're out of time, so reaction of the week, we had a special one planned for Fred Thompson, who, former U.S. Senator and actor, passed away.
Yeah, sadly, I believe it was at the age of 73, lymphoma. He was in Law and Order. He was in Die Hard 2. You mentioned that he was in The Hunt for Red October. Then he was, senator for Tennessee. He didn't do well in his bid to become president, but honestly, a good person has truly left us, and I just wanted to take that time, take the time to just put one last shining light on him and says, rest in peace, and my thoughts and my prayers go out to his family and all those who are saddened by his departure.
The statement by Fred Thompson's family was, quote, "It is with a heavy heart and a deep sense of grief that we share the passing of our brother, husband, father, and grandfather, who died peacefully in Nashville surrounded by his family. Fred believed that the greatness of our nation was defined by the hard work, faith, and honesty of its people. He had an enduring belief in the exceptionalism of our country and that America could provide the opportunity for any boy or girl in any corner of our country to succeed in life." And I do think that when it comes to his presidential run in 2008, having paid attention to that election, I don't even feel like he really tried, because he was missing for a lot of that election. He was MIA for a lot of that election.
Well, I believe that's when he started to get sick.
So maybe that was it then.
Don't quote me on that, but I believe he got into that race, and we were really young when that race happened. That was when I first started actually following politics, when Ron Paul came to my high school. And that's when the switch got turned on for me.
So rest in peace, former Senator Fred Thompson. You will be missed.
Grand New Party Update is the intellectual property of Tony Zor and Dennis Rose. Voice of credits provided by Gino Devaney. Theme music, Namaste, by Jason Shaw, as discovered off freemusicarchive.org on the album Tech Urban Dance.